Friday the 13th. Curse or terrifying coincidence. Friday the 13th. Just hearing this phrase, do you feel a chill down your spine? It's a day that millions of people worldwide avoid, refusing to fly, postponing weddings, or even stepping out of their homes. Why? Is this an ancient curse or merely a trick of fate? Every time Friday the 13th arrives, the U.S. economy suffers losses ranging from $800 million to $1 billion. This figure doesn't come from natural disasters or financial crises, but simply from fear. Airline passenger numbers drop by 25% on this day. Non-emergency surgeries are postponed. But why? Why does an ordinary day hold such psychological power? The answer lies not in science or statistics, but in the blood and fire of history. Today, we will uncover pages of history stained with blood, inexplicable tragedies, and how this fear has crept into every corner of the human psyche. Prepare yourself, because this story will make you glance at the darkness behind you. Part 1. The terrifying night of 1307, when history was written in blood. To understand the origin of Friday the 13th, we must travel back to 1307, to a night history calls the Night of the Knights. At that time, Europe lived under the shadow of one of the continent's most powerful organizations, the Knights Templar. These were not just the white-robed, red-crossed warriors we often see in movies. They were the financial tycoons of the Middle Ages, controlling the most sophisticated banking network in the world at the time. Imagine this. The Templars owned over 9,000 estates across Europe, a massive commercial fleet, and most importantly, they lent money at interest to both kings and merchants. In an era when the church forbade usury, the Templars found ways to circumvent this ban through complex financial contracts. Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master of the Templars, was not only a religious leader, but also a medieval CEO, managing a financial empire worth billions in today's dollars. But this very success made them a target for Philip IV, known as Philip the Fair, a king with a heart as cold as ice. Philip not only owed the Templars an enormous debt, estimated to be equivalent to 3 years of the royal budget, but also feared their growing political influence. And then came the fateful night. Friday, October 13th, 1307. Philip had meticulously planned this execution. Months earlier, he secretly sent sealed letters to officials across France with instructions: do not open until October 13th. In those letters, Philip ordered the arrest of all Templar members on French soil. That night, a simultaneous raid unfolded with the precision of a military campaign. From Paris to Toulouse, from grand castles to small monasteries, thousands of knights were dragged from their beds, shackled, and thrown into dark dungeons. The accusations leveled against them were not only severe, but also bizarre for the time. Worshipping a mysterious head called Baphomet, denying Jesus Christ, and performing heretical rituals in the dead of night. Notably, these charges were entirely baseless, fabricated by Philip and his advisors to justify plundering their wealth. The knights were subjected to brutal torture. Their feet burned, their bodies stretched on racks, and other sophisticated torture devices. The sole purpose was to force them to confess to crimes they did not commit. The climax of this story was the tragic fate of Jacques de Molay. After 7 long years imprisoned in damp dungeons, Enduring countless tortures, he was finally brought to the stake on Ile de la Cité in Paris on March 18, 1314. Witnesses recounted that as the flames began to consume his body, Jacques de Molay shouted a haunting curse that echoed across the Seine River. Philip, Clement, within a year, I summon you before God's tribunal. And something strange happened. Just 42 days later, Pope Clement V died in excruciating agony. His body seemingly burned from within by a mysterious illness that physicians could not diagnose. Eight months later, Philip IV also died suddenly after a mysterious hunting accident, leaving his kingdom in chaos. De Molay's curse seemed to extend further. Philip IV's lineage was struck by the curse of the accursed kings. His three sons all ascended the throne, but died young without male heirs, leading to the end of the Capetian dynasty and the start of the 100 Years' War between France and England. This was the first time in history that Friday the 13th was associated with a major tragedy, an event with profound consequences across Europe. From that terrifying night in 1307, this day began to carry a mysterious and fearsome aura. Part 2. The Code of the Number. 13 and Friday, when symbols become obsessions. To understand why Friday the 13th holds such psychological power, we must delve into the layers of symbolic meaning accumulated over millennia. First, let's talk about the number 13. In most ancient cultures, the number 12 was considered a symbol of perfection and cosmic order. There are 12 zodiac signs governing human destiny, 12 months in a year based on the lunar cycle, 12 hours of day, and 12 hours of night. In Greek mythology, there were 12 Olympian gods ruling the world. In Christianity, Jesus chose 12 apostles. Even the hero Hercules had to complete 12 labors to atone for his sins. The number 13, in this context, is the number that exceeds the limit, disrupting the perfect balance of 12. It represents chaos, instability, and the unpredictable. In the Last Supper, one of the most sacred events in Christianity, there were exactly 13 people at the table, Jesus and his 12 apostles. And the 13th person? Judas Iscariot, who betrayed the Savior for 30 pieces of silver. Judas's presence turned a sacred meal into the prelude to the greatest tragedy in religious history. In Norse mythology, a similar story unfolds. Loki, the god of deceit and chaos, was the 13th guest to appear at a feast in Valhalla among the gods. His uninvited presence led to the death of Balder, the god of light, purity, and joy. Balder's death was seen as the beginning of Ragnarok, the apocalypse of the gods. As for Friday, this day carries negative connotations in many religious traditions. In Christianity, Friday is the day Jesus was crucified. In Jewish tradition, it's the day Adam and Eve ate the forbidden fruit and were expelled from the Garden of Eden. Interestingly, not all cultures fear the number 13. In Italy, 13 is considered lucky, and Italians avoid the number 17. In China, the number 4 is unlucky because it sounds like the word for death. In Japan, both 4 and 9 are avoided. 9 because it sounds like suffering. This shows that the fear of Friday the 13th is not a universal phenomenon, but a product of Western culture, shaped over centuries by religious stories, history, and mythology. Even in the Code of Hammurabi, one of the oldest legal codes in the world, dating to around 1750 BCE, researchers found that the 13th law was omitted, though it's unclear whether this was due to technical reasons or superstition. One intriguing theory suggests that the fear of 13 may stem from ancient lunar calendars. A typical year has 12 lunar months, but occasional leap years with 13 months were considered abnormal and difficult, making it hard for farmers to predict crops and weather. Part 3. A chain of terrifying historical events. Now, let's explore the real events that have reinforced the curse of Friday the 13th in the human psyche. What I'm about to recount is not myth but carefully documented history. 1521, the fall of the Aztec Empire. Friday, August 13th, 1521, marked one of the greatest turning points in the history of the Americas. Emperor Cuauhtémoc, the last ruler of the mighty Aztec Empire, was captured by Hernán Cortés's forces in Tenochtitlan. This event not only marked the end of one of the greatest civilizations in the Americas, but also ushered in 3 centuries of Spanish domination in Mexico. The Aztec Empire, with an estimated population of 15 to 25 million, was wiped out within decades, one of the largest genocides in human history. 1940, the attack on Buckingham Palace. During the dark years of World War II, London endured 57 consecutive nights of bombing by the German Air Force. Buckingham Palace, a symbol of the British monarchy and the nation's resilience, was heavily protected with complex camouflage and anti-aircraft systems. But on Friday, September 13, 1940, a German bomber broke through all defenses and dropped bombs directly on the palace. The bombs completely destroyed the royal chapel and severely damaged the main bow wing. Fortunately, King George VI and Queen Elizabeth escaped unharmed, but the event shocked the entire British Empire. 1970, the Bola cyclone disaster. This may be the worst Friday the 13th in human history. The Bola cyclone swept through Bangladesh, then East Pakistan, on Friday, November the 13th, 1970, producing 6-meter-high waves that flooded thousands of square kilometers of the Ganges Delta. The official death toll was 500,000, but some estimates suggest up to 1 million lives were lost. Millions more were left homeless and lost their farmland. This disaster was not only a natural catastrophe, but also a political spark that led to the Bangladesh Liberation War and the birth of an independent Bangladesh. 1972, the Andes tragedy. On Friday, October 13, 1972, Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571, carrying the Old Christians Club rugby team, departed from Montevideo for Santiago, Chile. The Fairchild FH227D, with 45 people on board, crashed into a mountainside at 3,570 meters in the Andes. 16 people died in the crash, and the survivors faced 72 days of hell in the harsh mountain conditions. With temperatures dropping to minus 30 degrees Celsius, no food and no rescue equipment, they were forced to eat the flesh of the deceased to survive. A desperate decision that ultimately saved their lives. In the end, only 16 of the 45 passengers were rescued. Their story became a legend of human survival. 1989, a double Black Friday. The year 1989 saw 2 major disasters occur on separate Fridays the 13th. First, on Friday, October 13th, the U.S. stock market suffered a partial collapse. The Dow Jones Index lost 190 points in a single day, a massive figure at the time, equivalent to nearly 7% of its value. Billions of dollars evaporated in hours, sending millions of investors into panic. In the same year, on another Friday the 13th, the Jerusalem computer virus attacked nearly 1,000 computers in the UK. This was one of the first major virus attacks in computing history, wiping out hard drive data and causing millions of pounds in damages. 1992, the Turkey earthquake. On Friday, March 13th, 1992, Turkey was struck by a 6.8 magnitude earthquake in the Erzincan region. Over 2,000 people died, and 50,000 were left homeless. What's particularly eerie is that this earthquake occurred exactly 53 years after the 1939 Erzincan earthquake, another major disaster in the same region. 2012, the Costa Concordia disaster. The Costa Concordia, one of the world's most modern and supposedly safest cruise ships, carrying 4,252 people, capsized off the coast of Giglio, Italy, on Friday, January 13, 2012. Captain Francesco Schettino abandoned the ship before completing the passenger evacuation, leading to 32 deaths. This incident, the worst maritime disaster in Italy since World War II, raised serious questions about modern maritime safety. All these events may be mere coincidences, but as they were recorded, retold, and remembered, they became pieces in the larger puzzle of the Friday the 13th curse. Part 4. Modern Culture and the Power of Belief. In the modern world, Friday the 13th has transcended history and religion to become a global cultural phenomenon. It not only affects individual psychology, but also has profound impacts on economics, society, and popular culture. The fear of Friday the 13th has been officially named paraskevdikatriaphobia, derived from Greek paraskevi, Friday, dekatria, 13, and phobia, fear. It's estimated that 17 to 21 million Americans suffer from this fear to varying degrees. Economic impact. According to the Stress and Phobia Management Institute in North Carolina, the U.S. aviation industry loses about 25% of its passengers every Friday the 13th. People afraid of this day refuse to fly, postpone important business trips, or skip meetings. The hotel industry also sees a significant drop in bookings. However, some high-end hotels have learned to capitalize on this fear by offering special discounts or hosting horror-themed parties, turning a disadvantage into a business opportunity. One of the clearest manifestations of Friday the 13th's influence is in modern architecture. Over 80% of high-rise buildings in the U.S. skip the 13th floor. Elevators go straight from the 12th to the 14th floor, as if omitting the number could cheat fate. Similarly, many hospitals avoid room number 13, airports skip gate 13, and some airlines omit seat 13 on their planes. Even in residential areas, many addresses skip from 11 to 15 to avoid the number 13. Hollywood and popular culture. In 1980, director Sean S. Cunningham's film Friday the 13th turned the day into a horror brand. The character Jason Voorhees, with his iconic white hockey mask, became an instantly recognizable cultural symbol. The franchise spawned 12 sequels, grossing over $460 million worldwide and creating an entirely new horror subgenre. Countless other films, novels, and video games have drawn inspiration from this day. Psychological paradox. Interestingly, many people are both afraid of and fascinated by Friday the 13th. Movie theaters report higher attendance for horror films on this day. Ghost tours, off-season Halloween festivals, and events themed around challenging bad luck have become popular. The self-fulfilling prophecy phenomenon. Psychologists have identified a phenomenon called the self-fulfilling prophecy related to Friday the 13th. When people believe the day is unlucky, they tend to be overly cautious, leading to stress and errors. Seek out negative signs to confirm their beliefs. Remember and exaggerate misfortunes that occur on this day. Overlook positive events that also happen. Cultural diversity. Interestingly, the fear of Friday the 13th is primarily a Western phenomenon. In Italy, people fear Tuesday the 17th. In Spain and Greece, the unlucky day is Tuesday the 13th. In East Asian countries, the number 4 is avoided because it sounds like death. This shows that this fear is not innate but shaped by culture, education, and tradition. Efforts to break the curse. Throughout history, there have been attempts to challenge the Friday the 13th curse. In 1881, a group in New York founded the 13 Club to prove that superstitions about the number 13 were baseless. They held dinners with 13 guests on Fridays the 13th in rooms numbered 13. However, according to some, possibly embellished accounts, the club experienced numerous unusual incidents and eventually disbanded. Though this story may be an urban legend, it further reinforced the curse in the public's mind. Conclusion. Curse or the power of the mind. After a long journey through history, from the pyres of 14th century Paris to modern tragedies, we face a fundamental question. Is Friday the 13th truly cursed, or is it merely a product of human imagination? From a purely scientific perspective, there is no statistical evidence that Friday the 13th has more accidents or disasters than other days. A 2011 study in Germany, published in the Journal of World Surgery, analyzed 3,281 days at a major hospital, including 15 Fridays the 13th. The results showed no difference in emergency cases or surgeries. Similarly, NASA has confirmed no connection between Friday the 13th and natural disasters. Scientists have also ruled out the possibility of the asteroid Apophis colliding with Earth on Friday, April 13, 2029. But perhaps the true power of Friday the 13th lies not in objective events, but in its psychological impact. Professor Stuart Weiss of the University of Connecticut, who has studied this phenomenon for decades, concluded, "Our beliefs create our reality." When millions of people believe in something, whether true or not, it produces real consequences. People change their behavior, make different decisions, and set off chains of events that wouldn't occur without that belief. A lesson in the power of stories. Friday the 13th teaches us an important lesson about the power of storytelling. From Jacques de Molay's curse to Hollywood films, from historical tragedies to folk legends, these have woven a rich and complex narrative tapestry. This story doesn't just live in books or movies. It exists in the actions of millions, influencing business decisions, public policy, and even urban design. It has become a measurable cultural force, counted in dollars and cents. A challenge for the future. So, what should we do with this curse? Perhaps the answer lies not in denying or fully believing it, but in understanding its power. Friday the 13th may serve as a reminder of humanity's ability to create its own reality. When we believe in something strongly enough, we can make it real, whether positive or negative. Instead of letting fear dominate, we could use this day as an opportunity to challenge ourselves, to examine whether baseless beliefs are controlling our lives. History has given us dramatic stories about Friday the 13th, from bloody political conspiracies to mysterious tragedies. But the future of this day depends on how we choose to tell its story. We can continue to live in the shadow of fear, or we can reclaim control of our narrative. Perhaps the next time Friday the 13th arrives, instead of avoiding it, we'll embrace it as a day to challenge fate, laugh at superstition, and write a new story. After all, the scariest thing may not be a particular day of the week, but surrendering our power to define the meaning of our lives. Thank you for joining me in exploring the mystery of Friday the 13th. Please share your thoughts. Do you believe in this curse? And more importantly, what will you do on the next Friday the 13th?